Chapter 9. By Monday morning, the master bedroom was finished, but the kitty was crying and bleeding from his bottom being so raw. So, Kayla called Dr. Maddock and made another appointment. This time Alyssa went with her, driving so that Kayla could hold the kitten. She was sure he'd grown a lot over the weekend, and she wished she had a kitchen scale to weigh him. She had one on order from Amazon on advice from Kitten Lady, but it hadn't arrived yet. She was hoping for the new bottles, playpen, receiving blankets, and so much more to come in the mail the following day. As they drove, she told Alyssa about his last appointment. His bottom is so raw now. It has open wounds. I feel so badly for him. Is that why we're going in today? Alyssa asked. Yeah, and I want to make sure he's going to be okay. He seems so much more alert than he did on Thursday, but I'm still really scared for him. Kayla could feel him squirming around in her bra, so she pulled him out, stroking him carefully with one finger. I'm worried about you if he doesn't make it, Kayla. You are so attached. Kayla sighed. I know. But I don't know any other way to be. It's not a bad thing to love with all your heart. You might have it broken more often than most, but when a bone breaks, it grows back stronger. I would say it's the same way with your heart. Hopefully you're right. I'm just glad I have my sisters surrounding me, ready to pick up the pieces if my heart does break in two. You think that's possible? Alyssa smiled. We're here for you. Always and forever. Kayla sucked in a breath. Their mother had always used that phrase with them, and it cut her quick. Thanks. Thinking of Mom? Always and forever, Kayla responded, and Alyssa gave her a sad smile. They traveled the rest of the distance without saying much, both of them thinking of the parents they'd lost on a fateful night in March. When Kayla carried the kitten in, Alyssa went with her. The vet smiled when she saw how much more the kitty was wiggling. Oh, my goodness. He's looking so much more awake now. Kayla nodded. I'm just worried about his bottom. If he were a baby, I'd say he has awful diaper rash. The vet picked him up and looked at his underside. You can use something like Vaseline on this, but he's starting to get infected, so I'm going to give you some prescription cream for it. You'll want to put it on every time you stimulate him, so after every feeding. Let's weigh him again. After setting him on the scale, she shook her head. He's showing the same weight, but he may have gained. My scale is not meant for such tiny animals. I'm getting a kitchen scale from Amazon. As soon as it arrives, I'll be monitoring his weight daily. Good. We want to see significant growth. He's smaller than a 1-week-old kitten should be, and he's getting close to 3 weeks. Just keep an eye on it, and if he doesn't grow, then bring him right back in. Dr. Maddock looked at the kitten in her hand for a moment. I think I want to give him a steroid shot as well. It should help clean up some of that rash and make him feel better. How's the diarrhea? Still as bad as it was, but he's more active. I didn't have to use the Gatorade. Okay, good. The diarrhea is going to be there until the parasite is completely gone. It's actually good that he has it right now, because those nasty critters need to come out. Kayla nodded. She desperately wanted to ask if the vet thought he would live now that they'd gotten him through this, but she was afraid of the answer. She knew he was still very weak. Alyssa smiled down at the kitty, stroking him with one finger. He's so tiny. He'll grow, Kayla said optimistically. She pretended she didn't see the look her sister exchanged with the vet. She was sure he'd be fine. He had to be. Crypto got his shot and was handed back to her. Does he have a name yet? Dr. Maddock asked. Kryptonite. I love it. Perfect for him. He's certainly my kryptonite, Kayla said, kissing the side of the tiny black head. On the drive back, Alyssa asked about how it was going with the house, and Kayla brought up her idea. How would you feel about managing rentals for me? I want to do weekly rentals, but I'm not sure how I feel about fees. Would you be willing to do it for a lower fee? Alyssa frowned. I've never even thought of that. I've always sold homes, not looked into the rental side of things. I could do it, though. Could be fun. Are you planning on having an entire business worth of houses to rent out weekly? Yes, I am. Hopefully you won't find a new kitty at each one, Alyssa said with a smirk. No one needs you to be a crazy cat lady, and we all know you'd never give one of them up. Kayla sighed. I'm not sure I could. I don't know. We'll see how this one does. He's in the best hands he could possibly be in. I don't think anyone could love that little squeaker as much as you do. He doesn't squeak. He screams. At me. At the top of his tiny little lungs. Apparently, it's my job to read his mind and do whatever he needs, whenever he needs it. Alyssa laughed. Sounds like the life of a mom. Asterisk. At 4 weeks, the kitty wanted to explore some, so when Kayla was working on an area she felt he was safe in, she'd let him get down and play. He walked a little funny due to the sores on his bottom and on his tail from the tummy issues, but he was moving around. He would try to pounce on her toes, but he was tiny enough that it was just comical. She had him set up in a playpen beside her bed. When she heard him cry during the night, she immediately got up and fed him. She still set an alarm for 4 hours, so if he didn't wake up during that time, she could wake him and feed him. While she was doing all that, she was getting the house put together like she wanted it. Amanda had decorated the living room and kitchen, and both rooms were finished. She was now going through the bedrooms one after the other to get them ready for guests. Amanda had instructions to squeeze the maximum amount of people into each room except for the master, but the master still had a couch with a pull-out bed if people wanted to use it. And Kayla would make sure there was a playpen in the closet for any babies that visited. One Saturday evening, the sisters planned to send their men out to Max's bar while they had a game night. Kayla was thrilled. She'd bought a carrier for the kitten, and he could stay in his bag except when being fed, and she knew that would fit Taylor's criteria for an animal in the house. When she arrived at the band B, the men were just getting ready to go. Nick, Ryan, and Brandon were all going to Max's for the night. Nick looked around him. I think there's someone else who needs to come with us, he said. He walked down the hall and pounded on Justin's door. Kayla could hear him from the living room. Come with us. We're going to Max's. Well, I won't get any work done tonight anyway, with the way the sisters will be caterwauling. They make the most noise of anyone in this entire place. Justin came out of his room, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. He walked past the living room without even looking to see who all was there, which Kayla found odd. She looked at Lauren. Still trying to figure out what he's doing in his room? Lauren shook her head. I've figured it out, and I'll never forgive him for not telling me. What is it? Kayla asked, noting the looks of curiosity on the others' faces. I'm not telling. It's his secret. Lauren got to her feet. I made game snacks, and I have ice cream. Kayla smiled. Sounds good. I know you bring me dinner every night, Lauren, but it'll be nice to eat something hot for a change. Taylor frowned at Kayla. You could bring crypto in his little bag. I wouldn't mind. I just try to follow your rules with him. It makes sense that you don't want a cat running around here. Kayla shrugged. She'd gotten used to her solitary life next door. There was always someone checking in on her, so it wasn't as if she felt completely isolated. What are we playing tonight? Amanda smiled. Whatever we're playing, I get to share my news first. She held out her left hand. Ryan and I are getting married. Probably not until spring, but we're getting married. Kayla was the first to jump up and hug Amanda. I'm so happy for you. You found love again. I did. And I'm thrilled, Amanda said, showing off her ring. Alyssa, Lauren, and Taylor took turns hugging Amanda. So happy for you, Alyssa said. I can't believe it took us moving to Richland to find the right man for us. Taylor smiled. I think I found the right one for me, too, but I have no announcements to make yet. Lauren frowned. Kayla and I need to get out more. Apparently, the men here are better than the ones in Salt Lake. Right? Amanda laughed. I don't know that they're better, but Ryan and I plan to be blissfully happy. Who wants to be a bridesmaid? They played scattergories and laughed uproariously all night, each of them enjoying their time together. When it was time for Crypto to eat, there was no lack of volunteers wanting to bottle feed a kitten. They all laughed when he gripped the bottle with his front paws and held onto the bottle like they were about to take it away. After he ate, Kayla carefully took out the bag of kitty litter she'd brought and a small shallow box. She put Crypto into it, and he immediately did his business as if he'd been using a litter box for years. Wow. I had no idea you already had him litter trained, Taylor said. I'm impressed. Kayla shrugged. He mostly did it. I just stimulated him to go over his litter box a couple of times, and voila. He seems healthy now except for his weight. I'm going to take him back to the vet Monday, though, just to make sure. He's finally growing, but he's still only the size of a 2-week-old. And he's 5 weeks. All of the sisters stared at him, frowning for a moment. I hope he makes it, Lauren said softly. Me too. I think he's mostly out of danger, unless he's doing the failure to thrive thing. We'll see what vet says on Monday. Who wants to go with me? Kayla asked. Yes, she could just stick him in his carrier, but she knew he would do better if her hands were on him during the drive. Taylor shrugged. I'll go. I think it's my turn anyway. Lauren looked sad. If I have breakfast in the crock pot, can I go instead? Of course. Taylor nodded emphatically. You need out of this house a lot more than I do. I love this house, Lauren said softly. But it's starting to feel like my prison. Then it's time to go to the vet with Kayla. And I bet if she takes that bag, the two of you could go out to lunch, and no one would even notice. Kayla grinned. Let's do it. She and Lauren had always played together. They were a set. And they hadn't had nearly enough time together lately. And after lunch, I'll show you my house. Wonderful. I need to be back by 3, though. I'm making a Cajun fettuccine Alfredo. Should be fabulous, but it'll take a little time to make the sauce from scratch. Do you mind if I'm out until it's time to make supper? Lauren asked Taylor. Not at all. As long as I don't have to cook, I'm happy as a clam. Lauren looked at Kayla. It's a date. Chapter 10. Kayla was excited about the drive to the vet, because she was sure Crypto was out of danger. The difference between him from the day she found him to now was absolutely mind-blowing. Lauren drove, and the two sisters talked as if they hadn't seen each other in years, when in reality, they saw each other for at least a few minutes every day. How's your little buddy there? Lauren asked, nodding at the kitten Kayla was holding. So much better. I think he's out of danger now, but we'll see what the vet says. He's still so tiny, and that's really my only worry. He's not quite as big as a 2-week-old kitten should be, and he's 4.5 weeks old. He should be growing more. Lauren frowned. Why is he so tiny? I think the parasite probably stunted his growth. I'm not sure, but that's the impression I've gotten from all the videos I've watched. Hopefully he'll catch up, but I just can't make any promises. You're keeping him, aren't you? Kayla shook her head. I cannot commit to that until I'm sure he will survive. Oh, you're keeping him. I know you better than you think I do. I can't say he's mine and then have him die. It would hurt so much more. Kayla looked down at the little triangular face that hadn't quite filled out to look like a kitten yet. But he looked a great deal more like a kitty than he had when she'd found him. Lauren sighed. You do tend to get attached to the animals you find. How could I not? Kayla brought the kitty up and kissed the side of his head. He's so soft, sweet, and lovable. Don't you think? He's great, Kayla. I'm glad you two found each other. Kayla laughed. You make it sound like we're getting married. Just because he spends so much time with his paws in my bra doesn't mean there are those kinds of feelings there. Lauren shook her head. You're a mess and a half, and that's why I love you so much. At Kayla's direction, Lauren turned into the cattleman's parking lot and drove around back. Kayla took a deep breath and got out. I somehow worry she'll tell me he's not viable and should be put down. If she does, she's an idiot, and we'll take him to a new vet. Lauren held the door while Kayla went inside. Dr. Maddock was finishing with another patient, so she stood off to one side to wait patiently. It was a tiny little office, and there were no seats anywhere. Dr. Maddock hurried back into the room. He's still so tiny. Kayla nodded. He's growing, but not as fast as he should be. He weighed 232 grams on a scale this morning. And he's what? 3 weeks? Kayla shook her head. Almost 5. The doctor frowned as she took him from Kayla and weighed him in the back. I see no difference in weight, but it's really not surprising. She listened to his chest. He has an upper respiratory infection, which is really common in the bottle-fed kittens. I'm going to give him an antibiotic shot. I gave him a full 10 days of the other antibiotic you gave me. Kayla didn't want to hear that he was sick again. She wanted to scream instead. That antibiotic was very specific to the parasite he had. This one will fix the infection, and you shouldn't need to give him more at home. Dr. Maddock held Crypto and gave him a quick shot. He didn't even cry. Is he out of danger yet? Kayla asked. No, he won't be out of danger until he's on solid foods. Kayla took the kitten and cradled him to her. Then that's what we'll work on next. She tucked him into her cleavage to keep him warm, not thinking about the fact that people were watching her. Dr. Maddock laughed. I had a squirrel I kept in my cleavage several years ago. I was pulled over for something small like my registration sticker or something like that. So, I was sitting there talking to the police officer when he pops out and looks at the officer. I swear the officer took 2 steps back. I told him it was just my squirrel, and he let me go with a warning. He probably thought a grizzly bear would pop out of the back seat. Kayla laughed. I'm happy to say I haven't been pulled over while keeping him there, but I've pretty much been a homebody. I have been renovating a house between giving him his bottles. She stroked the little head that was popping out of her shirt. Should I bring him back if he doesn't grow better? Bring him back next week if he's not significantly larger than he is now. Kayla nodded, and as she and Crypto left the office, she whispered to the kitty. Grow. Crypto snuggled down into her bra and went back to sleep, happy to ignore her. When Kayla got into the car where Lauren was waiting, she asked, Do you want to go out for lunch? Or do you want to just drive home? Let's just go to Ranch Hand, Lauren said, referring to a truck stop just outside of town. Sounds good to me, Kayla said. I'm taking him in if there was any question. Do you have his bag? Lauren asked. And a bottle. I'm ready for an adventure. Then we're all set. While Lauren drove to the Ranch Hand, Kayla activated a warm pouch and quickly fed the kitty, so he'd be full and sleepy. No one needed to hear his tiny little screams echoing through the restaurant while they tried to eat their lunch. They went in and found a booth at the back. Kayla tucked the kitty beside her on the bench and grinned at Lauren. "I'll be thrilled if this works, but I have my doubts." The waitress, a pretty young blonde with a smile, came to their table. "Do you know what drinks you want yet?" Kayla pursed her lips. "I want a lime Ricky, please." There were alcoholic lime Rickies, but Kayla knew the waitress would realize she wanted one with Sprite, grape juice, and lime. "Oh, that sounds good. I'll have the same." Lauren was looking over her menu and at the daily specials. "Do you know what else you want? Or should I get the drinks and take your order then?" "I think we both need a little time," Kayla said, glancing at her menu for the first time as the waitress walked away. "I think I want breakfast." Lauren nodded. "I want pancakes. The short stack, I hope. Otherwise, you are going to be sick all day." The short stack was enough to feed at least 2 people. It was a plate of 2 thick pancakes, each a foot in diameter. The large stack was 3 of the same-sized pancakes, and if they could finish them in an hour, they were free. "Yeah, I'll do the short stack." Lauren wrinkled her nose. "I hate backing away from a challenge, though. I need you to drive me back to Richland. And you don't need that much food. I guess. I usually have tacos for lunch. I'm not sure how I feel about having something else." Kayla shrugged. "We can always drive back to the lake and see if we can flag Brandon down. You know he'd make an extra stop at our dock if Taylor called him. We'll use her as our ace in the hole if that's what you really want." "Nah. Let's eat here. I love their pancakes, and they always provide huckleberry syrup." "Who can pass up huckleberry syrup?" "Not I," Kayla said, pushing her menu to the middle of the table. When the waitress came back with their pretty purple drinks, they gave their orders. After she walked off, Kayla asked a question that had been burning a hole in her brain for days. "What did you find out about Mr. Mystery? What does he do for a living?" Lauren started to answer, but she shook her head instead. "I'm not going to answer that. But I will tell you he's neither a serial killer nor an FBI agent." "That doesn't exactly narrow things down, Lauren." Kayla sighed. "You're really not going to tell me? Your favorite sister?" "Nope. I'm not. If he wants to hide who he is from us, then more power to him. I'm so done with that man. I want to refuse to clean his room every week, but Taylor won't let me. It's the messiest always, and it takes the 2 of us to conquer it." "So, is he working here in Bear Lake?" "I'm not even going to answer that." "How's Max?" Lauren asked, trying to turn the topic. "Max? I think he's good. It's been a little while since I've seen him." "Why?" Lauren frowned. "I was just hoping there was a romance blooming between you 2. "I guess not. Not at this time. All my time and energy is going into renovations and the kitten. It's hard work being a kitten mama. I don't know how one cat can take care of 6 kittens." Lauren shook her head. "You need to have a life outside of working on the house and taking care of the kitten. You should invite him over for a movie night. Or have one of us come and kitten sit for a few hours, and you can actually go out somewhere." Kayla shrugged. "I think I'll just take care of him until he doesn't need it anymore. I've never had much of a social life, and I really don't feel like I'm missing out on anything by not having one now. I don't offer to kitty sit often. Looks like once every 23 years is my average. Are you sure you want to pass up this magical, golden opportunity?" Kayla shook her head. "I am doing just fine with my kitty. Furniture is going to be delivered to all of the upstairs rooms tomorrow, along with new appliances for the kitchen. Then I'll only have the formal living room and the family room to go, and I'll be pretty much done. I want to work a little on the outside as well, getting the yard mowed nicely and building a swing set, maybe a treehouse. You decided not to hire someone to do the lawn? Lauren asked. Nah. I'll borrow the riding mower and get it done this weekend. What will you do with the kitty then? Kayla looked down, embarrassed. I got a cat backpack, so I'll wear him while I mow. Lauren stared at her in shock for a moment before she started laughing. It was a full laugh that could be heard throughout the entire restaurant. Stop. You're a mess, Kayla. I guess that's why I love you so much. Takes one to know one. The waitress came then to drop off their food. The kitten chose that exact moment to scream at the top of his lungs. The waitress stood with a confused look on her face for a moment before she shook her head. Whatever living creature you have in that bag is yelling pretty loudly. That's just what he does. It's a kitten, Kayla said softly. You wanna see? Yes, please. Kayla opened the bag and held it out for the waitress to see. He's so tiny. Yeah, he's been pretty sick, but we think he's on the road to recovery now. The waitress looked like she wanted to hold him, but she kept her hands back. I can't pick him up without washing my hands for a month. Beautiful baby, though. With that, she hurried off to her next table, and Kayla returned the kitty to his little nest and zipped up the bag. Her sweet baby needed more sleep. Chapter 11. Instead of going home after lunch, Lauren went over to the house Kayla was working on to hang out with her. When did you say the furniture was coming? This place is barren. I still have little things to do in some of the rooms. Kayla led her sister through the house, showing her the small changes she wanted to make. All the furniture for the top floor will be here tomorrow. Then I'll finish up the last few rooms and install the kitchen appliances. The rest of the furniture will be here Friday. The 2 living rooms are already furnished and ready to go. I start working outside on Wednesday. I would have had everything delivered tomorrow, but that would take more than one moving truck. Makes sense. Lauren looked out one of the windows into the backyard. What are you doing out there again? I'm going to build a small shed for me to keep my things in. Then the entire house can belong to the guests while they're in residence. I want to build a treehouse and some outdoor play equipment for children. And I want some patio furniture for the back deck. I thought briefly about an outdoor kitchen, but I really don't think that's what I want. It's too much expense, and I won't really be able to charge more for it. So, when will you start renting it out? Lauren shook her head. I can't believe how quickly you got this place ready. Well, even after all the furniture is in place, Amanda is going to need a little time to make sure all the paintings on the walls are ready. I'd say another 2 weeks, and it'll be ready to be rented out, but then I'll need to find another place for me and crypto. You're keeping that cat. Don't try to tell me differently. I'm not. Kayla shook her head. I refuse to argue with you. I feel overqualified. Lauren rolled her eyes, reaching out to take the kitten. She stroked his head with one finger. He's so tiny. He's growing. Kayla wasn't sure why she felt it was a personal insult when people commented on crypto's size. He's going to be fine. Lauren looked skeptical, but Kayla didn't care. He was her kitten, and she knew him better than anyone else. Okay, let's eat. She hurried to the kitchen and made a bottle for the baby, and then she took it back to him. She fed him, and then she went to the dog playpen she'd purchased for him, unzipping the top. She set him next to his litter box, not at all surprised when he climbed in and went immediately, crying as he did. She'd forgotten to ask the vet about his crying when he used the litter box. He writhed in her hand and squalled like a rabid beast as she made him go, and as soon as she set him down, he went back to the warm spot in his pen and curled up to go back to sleep. It was a ritual they'd been through dozens of times, and she was so proud of how well he did with it. After putting him back in his pen, she looked at Lauren. I'm not sure how to entertain you, unless you want to watch me fill in some grout. Oh. Grout's my favorite. Lauren followed behind Kayla. Kayla frowned at her. You're not bored yet? Not bored enough to go home and work. And even though I've been told I have the day off, you know as well as I do that if I step foot through that door, there will be work waiting for me, and a lot of it. You have a point. You're welcome to nap in my bed or play with crypto. Nah. I'll follow you around watching as you put the final touches on this house. It's still hard to believe you've made such a difference in such a short amount of time. How many houses do you want? Kayla shrugged. I was able to buy this one with cash from the closing of the last house. I should be able to buy another with cash from my inheritance. I can finance a third. Then as those 3 earn me money, I'll pay off number 3 and buy number 4. I may try to rent a place I can fix up in the meantime. Or I could always live in the band B. I should make myself a little cabana in the back where I can live with my kitty. That's not a bad idea. And when you find a place to live permanently, there will be a spot to live for whichever sister is working in the band B. Kayla smiled and nodded. I'll talk to Taylor about it. It wouldn't cost a whole lot to do, and I would provide the labor. She's going to jump on the idea. Seriously, she'll love it. I hope so. I think it's brilliant, now that I've taken a minute to think about it. The more I can do for the band B, the better for all of us. They kept talking about Kayla's dreams as Kayla worked. Finally, she turned and looked at Lauren. What are your dreams? We keep talking about mine. Lauren sighed dramatically. I wish I knew. I love cooking for the band B, but I'm not sure it's what I want to do for the rest of my life. Only you can answer that, Lauren. Well, I'll keep thinking about it. You all had dreams before we came here, and I've got nothing. Why did Mom and Dad let me get a liberal arts degree? Kayla laughed, shaking her head. Because it's what you were closest to, and you kept threatening to drop out and join the circus. Well, other than that. That's not a good reason to let your daughter get a liberal arts degree. At least you have a degree. All of you do. Sometimes I feel like I'm really lacking in comparison. Kayla had started working immediately after high school, doing odd jobs for people and doing small contracting jobs. She'd never had a desire to go to college and had done what she wanted to straight away. You're not. You have this amazing set of skills. Look what you did here. But Mom and Dad would have liked it better if I'd gone to college. Lauren shrugged. I'm not so sure. Dad was always bragging about your skills with your hands. He liked your wood carvings better than anything else, of course, but he was proud you could take a rundown house and make it beautiful. Really? Kayla was surprised. Oh, yeah. And Dad had a ridiculous number of your carvings at his office. I think some of the women who worked for him were afraid of being buried alive under them. Lauren leaned on the counter so she could better see what her sister was doing. I needed to hear that. I've always felt like I was a bit of a disappointment to both of them. Lauren laughed. I would go home for a school break, and Mom and Dad would be talking about how you'd sold another house. Mom even once suggested that I offer to be your apprentice. What else would I do with a liberal arts degree? Kayla shook her head. I really worry about you sometimes, Lauren. Your liberal arts degree was a major accomplishment. You need to stop belittling yourself. What else would I make fun of then? Nah, I'll stick with the liberal arts degree. Lauren watched her sister intently. How much longer is that going to take? Probably another 30 or 45 minutes. Do you want to go check on the baby for me? The baby. You're now calling your kitten the baby. I'm really starting to worry here. Don't become a crazy cat lady and have millions of kittens, please. How else will I make a name for myself in this world? I'll be the kitten mom. Lauren hurried off, and Kayla chuckled under her breath. She hadn't chosen to take care of an orphaned kitten, but when the opportunity arose, she couldn't leave him high and dry. Would she do it again? Probably. But next time she'd know what she was getting into first. Lauren brought her the kitten. What do I do with him? Make him some formula. I'll start trying him on wet kitten food later. I want you to get a shaker cup from the cabinet to the left of the sink. Put in 1 scoop of formula and 2 scoops of water. Shake it up good. Carefully pour the formula into the kitten's bottle and put the nipple on it. Then bring him back here, and I'll tell you how to feed him. Lauren sighed. Can he stay with you while I fix his bottle? Sure. Just close the bathroom door. I think he could get under it, but he hasn't figured that out yet. Kayla looked at the kitten after Lauren had left. Auntie Lauren doesn't understand us, does she? Through the closed door, Lauren called. I refuse to be the aunt of a cat. I can be Lauren or Miss Lauren. None of this auntie nonsense. Kayla shrugged. Auntie Lauren is a pain sometimes, isn't she? Crypto walked over to her and nuzzled her bare foot. I wish I could pick you up, baby, but my hands are all yucky from grout. Lauren is going to have to make sure you're good. Lauren was back a moment later, and she picked the kitten up to feed him. She laid him on his back like a baby, and Kayla explained he could aspirate the formula that way, carefully instructing her sister on how to properly feed an orphaned kitten. Lauren shook her head. You know way too much about this. I've been watching as many videos as I can get my hands on. I feel like I've learned a lot. I feel like you've lost your mind, but whatever. Lauren laughed as his little black paws went up to hold the bottle like a baby would. He's adorable. Isn't he? He seems so human. Kayla could tell her sister was as enamored with the kitten as she was. She just wouldn't admit it. When it was time for Lauren to go back, Kayla washed her hands, put the kitten in the bag, and walked with her. What's for supper tonight? She asked. Lasagna. I'm doing a white lasagna with Alfredo sauce and Italian sausage. Save me a piece, would you? I always do. I'll have it for lunch tomorrow. Lauren's eyes narrowed. So, what will you do for supper tonight? Kitten formula? Kayla made a face. I think I'm having chicken fingers. The best chicken fingers in all of Idaho. And where do you get those? Lauren asked. Kayla went out the door, closing it softly behind her. Max held the keys to the best chicken fingers around, and she was going to have some. Even if she had to smuggle her kitten into his bar. She was sure he wouldn't mind if she kept him in his little carrier. All would be good. Especially the food. Chapter 12. Kayla carefully set her kitten carrier in the passenger seat and then buckled it in. Hopefully it would keep Crypto from flying in case of a wreck. Not that she was planning to be in a wreck, because she never had been, but her parents made her realize anything was possible. When she walked into the bar, she could smell the chicken fingers already, and she looked around, expecting to see a big group of people there, but it was just her. Max was nowhere in sight. She took a seat on one of the bar stools, carefully propping Crypto on the one beside her. Now you stay quiet, she whispered to the kitty. Looking up, she spotted Max walking into the bar, a slow smile on his face. Well, look who the cat dragged in. Max leaned on the bar toward her. Actually, I dragged the cat in, she said, nodding to Crypto in his carrier. He frowned. You can't bring a cat into a bar. What are you thinking? I'm thinking he's tiny, and he'll never leave his carrier. You wouldn't even know he was here if I hadn't told you. I guess not, he said, shaking his head. I won't say anything if you don't. One complaint and he's out of here, though. I'll try to keep him quiet, she promised. So, what are you doing here? Get tired of hanging out with only your hammer? Pretty much. And I was craving your chicken fingers. And a Shirley Temple. I'm not sure I can live another 30 minutes without either of them, and then where would my poor orphaned kitten be? Orphaned again, and who would take care of him? He's just a baby. Max laughed. I missed you, crazy Romriell girl. I missed you, too, crazy Max. I'll start your chicken fingers, and then mix your drink. He hurried off into the kitchen, and she sat there, looking over at Crypto. He may be keeping her at home more than she liked, but he was so worth it. His life was worth more than anything else she could possibly be doing. Max made her drink and slid it to her. How's the house coming along? I only have a few small things to do before it's ready. Furniture will be delivered tomorrow for all the upstairs rooms and next week for the downstairs. I'll be able to rent it in a week or two. That's awesome. Where will you go after that? I've got Alyssa looking for a new house for me, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to build a cabana in the backyard of the band B. It would be a place to live for whichever sister is running the place, and the kitten could stay with me back there. Both sound like good options. Will it be expensive to build the cabana? She shrugged. I'd do the work myself, and we'd get Amanda's decorating discounts on appliances and furniture. Shouldn't be a whole lot, and it would be a Band B property, so I think Taylor would spring for it. Good thing there's a huge lawn there, isn't it? Definitely. There was a ding from the kitchen. That should be your chicken fingers. Oh, good. I'm starving. When he came back with her food, she picked up one of the chicken fingers and dipped it in the gravy, taking a huge bite. She waved her hand in front of her mouth. Hot. Well, you knew I just pulled them from the fryer. Were you expecting cold? She took a sip of her drink to cool her mouth and glared at him. Don't be a pain, Max. But it's one of those things I'm really good at. You should dance with me while your food is cooling. She nodded and slid off her stool. Glancing at Crypto, she saw he was still asleep, and she went into Max's arms. There was a slow song playing. Kayla didn't recognize it, but she didn't care either. Dancing with Max was fun. Halfway through the dance, Crypto let out one of his tiny little screams, and she went over to get him. Sorry. Baby before fun. He shook his head. What can I do to help? She handed him the tiny bottle. Zap that for 10 seconds, please. As he was nuking the bottle, she stroked the kitten and told him how very much she loved him. It was crazy how much of her heart the tiny little creature held in the palms of his paws. When Max came back, he took the kitty from her. I'll feed him. Go wash your hands and eat. Kayla grinned, standing on tiptoe to kiss Max on the cheek. You're the best. Max just stood there with a goofy grin on his face as he held the kitten, carefully feeding him his bottle. Kayla rushed back out and ate, trying not to correct Max's hold on the kitten. He reminded her of the kid's song, Little Rabbit Foo Foo. He held little Crypto as if he was Foo Foo, about to bop the field mice on the head. Without criticizing him, she had to eat quickly, so she could tell him the kitty ate better for her. How else could she save his self-esteem and still get the kitty fed? He seemed to know she was chomping at the bit to feed him herself, because as soon as she ate her last bite, he offered her the kitten. After wiping her hands with napkins, she readily took him, adjusting the bottle and watching his little paws go up to hold the sides of it. That's how she knew he was eating well. That and the very loud sucking noises he constantly made. When he'd finished eating, she quickly helped him potty with wipes from his bag and cradled him close for a moment. Finally, she kissed his tiny head and put him back into his carrier, turning her attention back to Max. You need a dozen kids. You're a born nurturer. Kids, kittens. I'd take either. She smiled, but it was a sad smile. She was too boyish for any man to really be interested in. Her toolbox went everywhere with her, and her tool belt fit her as well as a diamond tiara would fit her sister Amanda. She didn't belong. And she didn't really want to. Max took her hand and again led her to the dance floor. Do you think we can make it through a whole dance without being interrupted now? I hope so. She grinned up at him as he took her in his arms for another slow dance. When do you get a break from the kitten? I want to go out with you again. Kayla frowned. I have a backpack for him. I can take him wherever now. Max frowned but nodded. What can we do that we can take the kitten to? Isn't the county fair in Montpelier this week? I wouldn't mind going and looking at what people have set up. We could do that. Are you sure you don't want to get a kitten sitter? He asked. I just feel better if I'm taking care of him myself. He's used to me. Kayla knew she sounded insane, but she didn't care. She'd agreed to take care of him, and she was going to see it through. All right. I have off Wednesday afternoon. Does that sound good? Sure. Should I save an appetite or plan on eating before? She asked. Let's eat at the fair. They always have fun stuff. She smiled up at him, thinking about just how attractive he was. It was odd for her to be the girl dancing with the handsome man, but at least no one would see them. She looked straight into his eyes and was surprised when he lowered his head and kissed her. She hadn't seen it coming, but that kiss packed a wallop. She wrapped both arms around his shoulders and kissed him back for all she was worth. The loneliness and isolation of staying home with the kitten all the time had caught up with her, and she needed the personal touch. There was the sound of a voice clearing, and Kayla pulled away in embarrassment. Ryan stood there with a goofy grin on his face. What are you doing with Kayla, Max? Do I need to tell Nick on you? Kayla laughed. Why would you tell Nick when you're about to be my brother as well? It was the first time Kayla had seen Ryan since the engagement, and she hurried to him and hugged him tight. You realize you're not just getting a wife. You're getting 4 sisters as well, right? Ryan nodded. That's the part that scares me. It should. Kayla looked over at Max. What time on Wednesday? I'll pick you up at noon. Both of you. I'll have his bottle mixed and ready. As Kayla picked up her baby and left the bar, she heard Ryan say, She's taking that cat on a date? He's a baby, and he needs her. Kayla couldn't help but grin. Max got her. Asterisk. As soon as he was sure Kayla was out of earshot, Max said, I can't believe I'm taking the cat out, but she seems to think he needs to be surgically attached. I suggested she get someone to watch him, but she hated that idea. Ryan laughed. Well, as long as she's the one taking care of it, I guess it's all right. She plans to carry him around in a backpack. I feel for you, man. Ryan walked to the bar and sat down. I hope she already paid you, because she left. Max shook his head. She didn't, but she did a bunch of work for me for free, so I still owe her a few meals. Makes sense. Well, I need chicken fingers and a Dr. Pepper, please. Nick is supposed to stop by on his way home from work. Alyssa had to show some houses this evening, so Nick called to see if I wanted to hang. We never get to see each other anymore, and you'd think we'd be even closer now that we're marrying sisters. I heard rumors about you and Amanda. They were all true. I'm madly in love with her, and I want her to have my babies. Max laughed, raising an eyebrow. I want you to think about the last half of that very carefully. Her sister is carrying a kitten everywhere she goes. Can you imagine how any of them will be with a human baby and not just a feline one? I really think her love for that kitten is kind of awesome. Who else would take the time to sit and bottle feed one and take him everywhere with her? I know. I think it's wonderful that she's so in love with the kitten, but when he's old enough to be left on his own for an hour or two, is she still going to be toting him around everywhere in a backpack? I worry about that just a bit. I don't blame you. But if you're interested in her, the kitten obviously comes with her. I know. I'll be good with him and treat him like my own son. Even though he's a cat who kind of looks like a half-drowned mouse. Really? I haven't gotten a good look at him. Yeah, he's a little odd-looking. Probably because of all his health issues. Ryan frowned. Her cat has health issues? Max shook his head. You know nothing about her kitten, and you're surprised he's going on a date with us? Maybe you should get to know the tiny ferocious predator. Maybe someday. Chapter 13. Kayla was ready when Max arrived on Wednesday. She was excited to hit the fair. They'd gone often when she was a little girl, and though she wasn't sure she would be riding any rides, especially with Crypto tagging along, she knew she would still have a good time. Max took Crypto's backpack from her and put it into the back seat, and she bit her lip against asking him to let her hold Crypto in the car. She didn't want to seem deranged, worrying as much as she did for a kitten, but she wanted to hold him. Badly. What do you like to do at the fair? He asked. She shrugged. You know, I haven't been since I was a teenager, but then I loved to ride all the rides. Did you go with your sisters? He asked. Always with Lauren. The two of us were paired up a lot at the lake. Alyssa had Hannah, and Taylor and Amanda would hang out, which left me with Lauren. He grinned. Sounds like you weren't necessarily happy with that arrangement. You've met Lauren, right? I love her, but when she was a kid, she was so much more hyper than she is now. She'd see a boy at the fair, and we would be following them around for the rest of the day. It got tiresome at times. What about you? You never followed boys around at the fair? Max had a grin on his face as he asked. Never. Lauren was always good at girly stuff, like fixing her hair and doing her makeup. I knew no boy would look at me with her in the vicinity. She shrugged. I would never be able to take my eyes off you to look at Lauren. Makeup or no makeup. You're the one who makes my heart beat faster. Max's eyes were glued to the road, and he seemed nervous telling her he was attracted to her. Kayla shook her head. You really don't have to say things like that to me. I know I'm no beauty. You don't have a mirror? She turned from him to look out the window, refusing to keep the topic going. I fed Crypto right before you got there, so he should sleep soundly for about 4 hours. That will give us lots of time to do what we want before I ever need to feed him. I've dated some over the years, but I've never taken a kitten on a date with me before. Doesn't it seem a little strange to you? Kayla shrugged. Seems like the perfect date to me. Who doesn't want to take a kitten with them wherever they go? Well, we'll have fun whether he's with us or not. He pulled into the fairgrounds, and she got out of the truck, getting her backpack from the back seat. It had been strange not to have Crypto on her when she was in the vehicle. She peeked inside to make sure he was doing all right, and then she put the backpack on. Good thing he's light as a feather. I won't know he's on my back. I can carry him if he gets too heavy. I don't mind. You're a good guy, Max. When Max reached down to take her hand, she was a little surprised. Kissing her one time in the bar was one thing, but did he really want everyone to know they were together? She had just pulled her hair back into a ponytail and was wearing a bit of lipstick. Lauren had offered to do her hair and makeup, but it seemed logical to keep it simple for the fair. Oh, don't let me forget to take Lauren a funnel cake. She loves them, and I don't think she's going to have time to come here to get it herself. doesn't she get days off? You're working her like she's an indentured servant or something. She was off most of the day on Monday, and she had a day off last week. Or was it the week before? I know she had a day off recently. Well, one of you should let her have a day off every week. Kayla frowned. I know. But none of the rest of us can cook like she does. When she took her day off recently, she prepared everything and gave very explicit instructions for cooking it. She should be able to do that every week, though. Twice a week. Yeah, she should. I'll talk to the others about it, and maybe we can make something work for her to be off more often. Kayla knew she couldn't take her place, though, so it would be hard to ask, knowing she wouldn't help. She had enough going on with her work and the kitten. Justin seems to think she hung the moon. I mean, he complains about her, but the sparkle in his eye when he says it tells me that he doesn't mean a word of it. He walked to one of the food stands there and read over the menu. See anything you want? She studied the menu carefully. Maybe the stuffed potato. It looks delicious. It was a baked potato with brisket, chives, onions, grated cheese, sour cream, melted cheese, and bacon. Who could resist something like that? With everything? He asked, eyeing the thing on the menu. She thought about it for a moment. No onions or chives. Max winked at her. Is that for my benefit? She frowned at him, her brows drawn together. Not really. Well, kissing will definitely be a lot nicer for me without you having onions. He didn't wait for a reaction and instead stepped up to the window to order their food. Baffled that he wanted to kiss her again, she walked across the way and bought some donuts that the Bear Lake High School cheerleaders were selling. She hoped they'd be edible, because she hadn't known a lot of cheerleaders who could cook. Well, except Lauren. Lauren had been active in everything she could be in school. She was the most extroverted of the bunch of them. She took the plate of hot donuts she was handed and carried them over to a small picnic table that was shielded from the sun. It would be in the 40s that night, but it was hot. It had to be in the mid-80s, and that was a really high temperature for southeastern Idaho. A few minutes later, Max joined her, seeing that she was sitting with the kitten on her lap, talking to him soothingly. I hope you have hand sanitizer to wash your hands after handling him. Kayla resisted rolling her eyes. I have baby wipes. Would you like some? You haven't really kept your hands perfectly clean today. Her kitten was clean, and she didn't care who argued with her. She'd given him a bath in the sink over the weekend, and he was learning to keep himself clean. She also brushed him with a toothbrush after each meal, to stimulate him to wash himself. He grinned. I'll take some wipes, too. She wondered at his grin, but she didn't ask about it, instead putting the kitten back in his bag and pulling the baby wipes from her purse. She handed him 2 of them and pulled out a couple for herself. That food smells amazing. It does. And what are you doing buying donuts? This is a date, which means it's my treat. She shrugged. I wanted to support the cheerleaders, so I got some donuts. Besides, who can resist homemade donuts? Nick says that you and your sisters can eat your weight in food and never gain a pound. Kayla grinned at him, her fork halfway to her mouth. He's absolutely right about that. You should see the gallons of ice cream we put away in an evening. It's really kind of ridiculous. I'm sure it's even easier for you to keep the weight off. You're constantly working. Really, we're all constantly working, but my work is a little more physical than the others. She shrugged. I see. Max watched her eat for a minute before tackling his burrito platter. Would you ever consider not working? Why would I? If I injured myself, maybe, but I love what I do so much. Even if I could only do it 10 hours a week, I would still do it. How do you feel about kids? He asked. She shrugged. I'm pro-kids. I'm pro animals. Any living thing is pretty good in my world, but I tend to kill plants without meaning to. He tilted his head to one side. You wouldn't run away if you had a kid and he was hard work? Kayla gaped at him, her mouth slightly open. Why would you even ask me that? Who would do such a thing? And why would he think she'd do that? She was taking care of a kitten that was a ton of work. My mother did. Dad said that she wanted a baby really badly, but when she actually had to take care of me, things went downhill fast. She came from money, and she always expected to have a nanny or someone else to raise the kid. My dad didn't have money for something like that, and she wasn't about to work, so she left. That's really sad. Kayla shook her head. My parents were both great examples of how to be parents. Dad worked hard. Mom stayed home with us until Lauren was in school, and then she got a job working in this little craft store. She loved crafts, and she was able to work when she wanted to work, teaching classes on how to do things. She was always there when we got home from school. Dad was always at work, but when he was home, he made sure we knew we were number one in his life. She sighed, thinking about how much she missed them. Wow. My dad was a better buddy than he was a dad. I'd get into trouble at school, and he'd just look at me like I'd lost my mind, and then we'd go out for a burger. I learned to cook by hanging out with the man who owned the bar before we did. We went out for every meal when I was growing up. Sounds like you had an interesting childhood. Oh, trust me, I did. I ran around all summer on my own, playing at the lake or running around with Ryan and Nick. My dad never asked where I was. You've heard people say it takes a village to raise a child? That was me. All of the neighbors watched out for me, because they were worried that I was going to drown or get into trouble with the police. He shrugged. Never did either of those things. Though, the next-door lady, Mrs. Jackson, once grabbed me by my ear and dragged me back to my dad to keep me from getting into a fight. As soon as she was gone, Dad just laughed. Thank heavens for Mrs. Jackson, huh? No kidding. If she hadn't been around, I'm sure I'd still be running around beating up boys for making fun of me. Kayla furrowed her brows. Why were they making fun of you? They said my mom ran off because I was so ugly she couldn't stand to look at me. Well, that's not nice. Do you ever hear from her? He shook his head. I haven't heard from her since Dad's funeral, which was really weird. She showed up in a limo with her husband, who obviously was from the same kind of background she was. It was just weird. She hugged me and told me she'd missed me terribly. She tried to give me money, but I didn't take it. If she didn't want me in her life, then I didn't want her money in mine. But if she'd missed me, she'd have been there for me and would have called since, don't you think? Kayla sighed, shaking her head. I'm sorry she was so awful to you. He shrugged. I'm not sure why I told you all that. I must be losing my mind. Don't worry about it. I don't mind at all. Good thing. He looked a little disgruntled with himself for sharing so much, so Kayla worked on her baked potato without asking more questions. Chapter 14. After they'd finished their lunches, Kayla made a tiny litter box for the kitty with some litter she'd carried in a bag and a tiny little box she'd saved from an Amazon delivery. As soon as she put it on the bench next to her and set Crypto beside it, he went in and did his business. She had a different baggie for the used litter, and she poured that in after putting him back in his carrier. You did good, Crypto. What a big boy you are. Max was watching her with a silly expression on his face. The man seemed to think she'd lost her mind, but she didn't care. Her kitten was alive and well, and he was going to stay that way. He was getting stronger every day, and she was certain he was going to live. She just had to make sure he was certain as well. Kayla strapped the backpack on and stood up. So what first? He shrugged. I don't care. I like to do everything. My favorite thing is to go to the stalls where they're selling stuff and check it all out. And I have to go through the quilts and the 4-H displays. I'm not usually interested in shopping, but I could do it just this once. I don't like to shop a lot either. I just like interesting shopping, if that makes sense. Kayla watched as he threw their trash away, and then he walked back over to take her hand. You need me to wear him for a bit? Max asked. Nah. I've got him. Kayla headed to the left, toward the booths people had set up. As they shopped, they stopped at each booth, and Kayla touched everything. There was a shop that made beautiful pine boxes, and she stopped and stroked her finger over the face of a kitten. She had to have it. How much? She asked. Max already had his wallet out and was paying before she even heard the price. I was going to get that. Kayla protested. I told you I need to pay when we're on a date. Just deal with it. The older man, who was the proprietor, smiled. You like cats? While Max rolled his eyes, Kayla turned around so the man could see crypto through the mesh of the backpack. When she turned back around, the proprietor looked shocked. That thing is not a cat. It's a mouse. I assure you, he's a kitten. His name is Crypto. She wanted to walk away from him over the insult to her kitty, but she really wanted the box, so she stood quietly while he wrapped it and put it into a bag for her. There you go. Good luck with your mouse. The man laughed a little beneath his breath as he said it. Max carried the bag in one hand and held her hand with the other. Don't let him get to you. Crypto looks 1,000,000 times better than he did a couple of weeks ago. I guess some people don't recognize feline beauty when it's staring them right in the face. I guess not. He grinned at her. I'm not sure I would have if you hadn't so kindly pointed it out. She stopped next to talk to Jackie Criswell, who owned the Bear Lake Sweet Paradise store. Have you had her fudge? Kayla asked Max. It's absolutely incredible. Oh, I brought some. Jackie said. Would you like to get some? Max smiled. What's your favorite? Kayla was perusing the books by local authors and picked one up, flipping it over. It was by June Marie Saxton, and it looked really good to her. The caramel, she answered absently, still fingering the book. When she looked up, Max was having Jackie cut fudge for her. Max, you can't spoil me this way. Why not? You're spoiling that kitten, so I get to spoil you. Kayla shook her head. I'm buying this book as well, and you may not take his money for it, she said, frowning at Max. I can buy my own reading material. Add the book, Max said as he took out some cash. Jackie laughed. Let him buy things for you. When you're married, it'll be harder to get him to cough up cash for things you want. Married. Kayla froze at the word, waiting for Max to run screaming into the next booth. But he didn't. He just paid and acted like everything was fine. He took the book from Kayla and the chocolate and added them to the bag with the box. You ready? As they walked away, she asked, why didn't you correct her about us getting married? Why would I? I like being confused for the man lucky enough to marry a beautiful woman like you. She didn't comment on his calling her beautiful. Apparently, they would never be able to agree on the subject. I think this is where they sell the jam, she said excitedly. Jam? He asked. Is there special jam at the fair? Oh, my goodness! You've never had the jam here? There's this woman who makes it and sells it. She has a white chocolate raspberry that I want to bathe in. That sounds really good. Max grinned at her. It's so good. It gives me life. She walked more quickly toward the table, pulling him along behind her. You have got to try it. When they arrived at the table, she looked at the number of jars there. I need all 3 jars of white chocolate raspberry, please. The woman behind the table smiled and set them all on the counter. Feel free to sample some. Max picked up one of the crackers and spread a little bit of the jam on it. After he popped it into his mouth, he closed his eyes as he chewed. All right. I hope you have some more jars hidden, because I need a dozen of them. At least. The woman laughed and pulled out some more jars. Are you joking about a dozen? Because I have them. They might be hard to carry to the car, but I see your girl is wearing a backpack. Kayla jumped back. I have a kitten in my backpack. With a frown, the woman studied her. Why do you have a kitten in your backpack? He's bottle fed, and he's been sick. I have to feed him as soon as he's hungry. The older woman shrugged. You might have to make a few trips. Or drop her off in the car to bottle feed the kitten and come back with her backpack. Max laughed. I could do that. May I borrow your backpack? Kayla nodded. Absolutely. It's about time for him to eat anyway. He can go as long as 4 hours, but with as tiny as he is, I prefer to wake him up after 2. And I can feel him stirring in there. Max paid for the jam. I'll be back. Could you wrap the jars so they don't clank together too much in the bag? Absolutely. I'll get started wrapping, and I'll see you in a few minutes. The woman sat down and reached for a jar and a piece of newspaper. She said nothing else about the kitty, but Kayla could see by the look on her face that she thought she was insane. As they walked back toward his vehicle, Max grinned. I'm going to miss you carrying that kitten everywhere. The looks on people's faces. Kayla shook her head. I don't know why people don't think orphaned kittens deserve to live. No one would encourage a human baby to be left to die. No, they wouldn't. When they arrived back at his truck, Max helped her get settled with the kitty and took all of his paraphernalia out except for a couple of receiving blankets. I'm going to use these to further pad the jars. Okay. I have one more, and that's enough for now. I just tend to overpack, even for a kitten. I see that. He pressed a kiss to her cheek as he hurried away to retrieve the jam. Asterisk. Max couldn't help but think about how very much Kayla loved the tiny kitten in her care. He had never seen someone with such a strong, maternal instinct. He wasn't sure that was the right word, but Kayla would go to bat for her crypto. There was no doubt about it. As he walked, he watched the people there. There was a large group of boys wearing Bear Lake High School football jerseys. He knew the parade was that afternoon, and he was sure that's what the boys were doing in their jerseys. Or they were showing them off. One or the other. It was hard for him to understand why Kayla didn't think she was beautiful, but he wasn't going to press her any longer on the issue. He was simply going to tell her how pretty she was every time he was prodded to, and that was that. When he reached the structure where the jam was, he handed the woman the bag, and she carefully put the jars in it. Does your girl always carry a kitten around everywhere? He shrugged. We haven't been dating long, but I think if she fostered a lot of cats, she would have a lot of them. She gets too attached to ever let them go. I've never seen anyone do that before. Well, she found a dying kitten whose siblings had died and whose mother was gone, presumably dead. She couldn't help herself, and she started to bottle feed. Now he's doing a little better, but he's still really sick, so she carries him everywhere. The woman shook her head. Mother Nature takes care of kittens like that. His mother would have killed him mercifully. Maybe. But she's helping him to live. I don't see that as a bad thing. I guess that depends how much of her heart she's already poured into the little thing. If he's not going to live, then she just might lose herself. But to each his own, I guess. Well, he's lived and known love for weeks longer than he would have before she met him. I'll never see that as a bad thing. I suppose that's one way to look at it. She handed him the bag filled with the jars of jam. Thanks for your business. Thanks for the jam. I promise, it will be eaten. Max walked out of the tent, realizing that he wholeheartedly approved of what Kayla was doing even though it was odd. She was saving a life. How could that ever be a bad thing? Chapter 15. As they were driving back toward Richland, Max asked Kayla if she'd like to have dinner with him. Maybe you could find a kitten sitter, but if not, he can just come with us. Kayla smiled. I'd really like that. Let me see if Amanda is available. She and Alyssa have the most flexible schedules, but Alyssa is married. Give me a second. She quickly tapped Amanda's number on her phone. Hey you. How's the fare? Fabulous. They are still selling the white chocolate raspberry jam. I could live on that stuff. Who couldn't? Amanda asked. I'm kind of calling for a reason. I figured that. You usually just text me. Kayla took a deep breath. How would you feel about kitten sitting this evening? Max wants to go out, and I can take crypto in his carrying case, but it might be nice not to have to for once. I'd love to. At your place? That's probably best, because all his toys are there. I'm giving him wet food, and then following it up with a bottle, but I can write all that down for you or show you. We're on our way now, but I'm not sure what time Max wants to eat. Kayla glanced at Max. 5, he asked. He says 5. So, could you meet me around 4 at my place? Kayla asked. Absolutely. I'll be there. Kayla ended the call and looked at Max. She actually sounded excited about doing it. I think she's really just excited that I'm taking a little time away from Mr. Kitty Butt. Max grinned. Mr. Kitty Butt? She shrugged. Seemed fitting in the moment. Probably. He watched the road carefully. I'm going to go home and change into something nicer than shorts and a t-shirt. Kayla frowned. Just how nice? Like, do I need to put on a dress? Or would jeans without holes in them be satisfactory? He laughed. Because most of your jeans have holes in them? I buy my jeans from the DI, she told him, referring to Deseret Industries, a thrift store in the Salt Lake City area. I wear them for work, and I'm going to tear them and splatter paint on them. I have a couple of nice pairs of jeans, but I don't wear them often. How long until the house is done again? Just waiting on furniture. Alyssa is already on the lookout for the next one. Kayla stroked a finger across Crypto's back. We're having a sister meeting tomorrow evening to discuss the house. I'm going to bring up my cabana idea. That's going to be an interesting discussion. It will go well, even if they don't want me to do it. Everyone is all about ways to improve the guest experience at the Band B. And Taylor's about ways to raise the rates just a bit, which will mean we can make more improvements. Sounds good to me. You'll have to let me know how it goes. You should call me after the meeting. I don't have your number. And I don't have yours. Maybe it's time we rectify that, and we can talk to each other without just showing up unannounced. Kayla grinned. I don't know. I don't want to get any of those strange calls from you. I will not tell you what I'm wearing. He laughed softly. I wasn't planning that, but now you've suggested it. We'll exchange phone numbers as you drop me off. And you never told me if jeans without holes are okay for supper tonight? Jeans are fine. We'll probably go to Cooper's. Okay. I know that place. Didn't Hannah work there for a few years? She did. But Hannah has worked everywhere. I can't believe she's down to only one job as she gets her store ready. We all thought she'd be doing meetings with her architect between jobs 2 and 3. Kayla smiled. I'm glad she doesn't have to. So am I, honestly. He pulled into her driveway and got out, getting her jam for her as well as emptying her kitten backpack so she could take it in. You can wait with the backpack and bring it back tonight. I won't need it between now and then. Oh, good idea. He put the 2 jars he'd taken out back into the bag. Let me walk you to your door. You're such a gentleman. She started to quote Steel Magnolias to him, the line about taking the dishes out of the sink before he urinated in it, but she stopped herself. She wasn't sure he'd seen the movie, and she didn't want to offend him if he didn't get the reference. I try. He walked her to her back door, which seemed to be the only one she used, leaning down and pressing his lips to hers briefly. How long will Amanda be on the clock? As long as I need her. She's a night owl anyway. Why? I thought maybe we could go to the bar and do some dancing after dinner. It gives me a legitimate excuse to hold you close. Does that line work on all the girls you date? She asked, looking up at him, her lips still tingling from the kiss. Most of them. He winked at her and headed for his truck while she went inside. Are you hungry? She asked the kitten she was carrying. I can get you some food. I'll feed him, Taylor said, making her jump. I've got the kitten while Amanda does your hair. And then Lauren is going to come over to do your makeup while I go back to the band B, so we won't leave the place unwomaned. Kayla shook her head. No, I don't need all that. I'm just wearing jeans. Amanda sighed. Jeans without holes or paint splatters, I hope. Yes. Are you going to be paid for your job as the official fashion police? Maybe. Amanda held up a bag that Kayla could only assume was filled with torture instruments designed for pulling hair and making her not recognize her reflection in the mirror. Let's go up to your room, and I'll make your hair happen. And I'll help you pick out clothes for tonight, because left to your own devices, you'll go on a date looking like a contractor. There's nothing wrong with being a contractor, Kayla said, but she knew her sister was right. She certainly didn't want to look like one on a date. It was hard for him to understand why Kayla didn't think she was beautiful, but he wasn't going to press her any longer on the issue. He was simply going to tell her how pretty she was every time he was prodded to, and that was that. When he reached the structure where the jam was, he handed the woman the bag, and she carefully put the jars in it. Does your girl always carry a kitten around everywhere? He shrugged. We haven't been dating long, but I think if she fostered a lot of cats, she would have a lot of them. She gets too attached to ever let them go. I've never seen anyone do that before. Well, she found a dying kitten whose siblings had died and whose mother was gone, presumably dead. She couldn't help herself, and she started to bottle feed. Now he's doing a little better, but he's still really sick, so she carries him everywhere. The woman shook her head. Mother Nature takes care of kittens like that. His mother would have killed him mercifully. Maybe. But she's helping him to live. I don't see that as a bad thing. I guess that depends how much of her heart she's already poured into the little thing. If he's not going to live, then she just might lose herself. But to each his own, I guess. Well, he's lived and known love for weeks longer than he would have before she met him. I'll never see that as a bad thing. I suppose that's one way to look at it. She handed him the bag filled with the jars of jam. Thanks for your business. Thanks for the jam. I promise, it will be eaten. Max walked out of the tent, realizing that he wholeheartedly approved of what Kayla was doing even though it was odd. She was saving a life. How could that ever be a bad thing? Kayla looked at Taylor, who held her hand out for crypto. He needs to be fed. I usually do it in my room, because that's where his litter box is. He'll want to have about a teaspoon of wet food, which you can get from the can with the kitty lid in my fridge, and then he'll need his bottle heated up for 10 seconds in the microwave. Don't let him see the bottle before you give him his food, or he won't eat it, and he'll just want the bottle. Taylor shook her head. I feel like I'm going to be taking care of a child for a week, not a kitten for the time it takes to do your hair. He's a special kitten, Kayla said, refusing to be bothered by her sister's teasing. Very special, Taylor responded seriously. Amanda finally took Kayla's hand and pulled her toward the stairs. I hate it when you do my hair. Kayla griped. I know. But I can't let you go on a date with your hair in a ponytail. That doesn't work for me. It was fine for the fair, but you're going out to dinner tonight. Stop dragging your feet and come with me. Amanda stopped in the middle of the stairs and glared. You're just making this harder for both of us. I guess I want to look pretty and girly tonight. But if he doesn't like me as I am, then is he worth going out with? He likes you exactly how you are, and that's why you're going out with him. Now we're going to knock him out of his socks. Kayla started to make a joke about barefoot men, but the look on Amanda's face told her it was better not to. Instead, she meekly went along with her sister and sat down in the chair Amanda had chosen for the vanity in the bathroom. For the next hour, Kayla said little other than ouch when Amanda pulled her hair. She couldn't figure out why her sisters felt so strongly about her looking perfect for this date. Max didn't seem to care, so why should they? When her hair was finished, Kayla got up and went to her closet, very aware that Amanda wasn't going to let her out of the house without clothes she approved of. Taylor sat on the bed and watched, while Crypto alternated between playing on the floor with his toys and crying to be held. Kayla picked out her favorite pair of faded jeans, showing them to Amanda. They were comfortable and had no holes, so they should work. Perfect, right? Amanda groaned. Not exactly. Let me look. She walked in and flipped through the clothes Kayla had hanging, stopping at a pair of capris that were a little dressier than Kayla would have liked. These. But he said jeans were okay. These, Amanda said again as she started riffling through Kayla's shirts. She pulled out a cold shoulder top with pretty flowers on it. Kayla shook her head. No. That was a gift from Mom, but I didn't have the heart to tell her I'm not a pretty little flower with my shoulders sticking out kind of girl. It just doesn't work for me. I'll be the judge of that. Put both on. And wear a real bra and not a sports bra. Your girls will look better. My girls are much happier being smushed with a sports bra. Amanda walked to Kayla's dresser and started rummaging until she found a bra that would work better. Here. Please don't make me pick out your panties. Anything will work for those. Kayla sighed and took the clothes, walking into the bathroom to change. She hated real bras. They tended to be uncomfortable, but sports bras felt good to her. After struggling for a minute to fasten the clasp, because she only wore real bras a couple of times a year, she finally pulled the shirt over her head and slipped on her capris. Looking at herself, she sighed. She had to admit she looked a lot better than she would have, but she didn't feel like herself with her hair all perfect and flowers on her shirt. She stepped into her room and Amanda smiled. Perfect. Is not, Kayla mumbled. I looked better before. No, you didn't, Amanda said, shaking her head. You looked like someone who had spent all day working and didn't bother to change after. You need to look good for this date. Why? It's not like the relationship is going to go anywhere. I'm too much of a tomboy. Taylor grinned. Has he kissed you yet? When Kayla blushed and sputtered, Amanda nodded. See? He sees you as a lot more than a tomboy, or he wouldn't be wasting his kissing power on you. Kissing power? Kayla asked, thinking about how truly powerful she'd found Max's kisses. Did Amanda know something she didn't? Do you feel like you want to melt at his feet when he kisses you? Amanda asked. Well, of course. Why? That's because he has kissing power. Look your best and go out with him. You'll both be much happier that way. Amanda packed up all of her torture instruments into the bag she'd brought. I'll send Lauren over. Taylor got to her feet and handed Crypto to Amanda. No, I'll do it. One of the two of us should be there. Amanda shrugged and snuggled the kitten under her chin. You're getting so big. It was hard for him to understand why Kayla didn't think she was beautiful, but he wasn't going to press her any longer on the issue. He was simply going to tell her how pretty she was every time he was prodded to, and that was that. When he reached the structure where the jam was, he handed the woman the bag, and she carefully put the jars in it. Does your girl always carry a kitten around everywhere? He shrugged. We haven't been dating long, but I think if she fostered a lot of cats, she would have a lot of them. She gets too attached to ever let them go. I've never seen anyone do that before. Well, she found a dying kitten whose siblings had died and whose mother was gone, presumably dead. She couldn't help herself, and she started to bottle feed. Now he's doing a little better, but he's still really sick, so she carries him everywhere. The woman shook her head. Mother Nature takes care of kittens like that. His mother would have killed him mercifully. Maybe. But she's helping him to live. I don't see that as a bad thing. I guess that depends how much of her heart she's already poured into the little thing. If he's not going to live, then she just might lose herself. But to each his own, I guess. Well, he's lived and known love for weeks longer than he would have before she met him. I'll never see that as a bad thing. I suppose that's one way to look at it. She handed him the bag filled with the jars of jam. Thanks for your business. Thanks for the jam. I promise, it will be eaten. Max walked out of the tent, realizing that he wholeheartedly approved of what Kayla was doing even though it was odd. She was saving a life. How could that ever be a bad thing? Chapter 16. By the time her sisters were finished turning her into a fairy princess, Kayla was exasperated with all of them, but she had to admit that she looked a lot better than she had before they'd started on her. Amanda was set with the kitten, and she was holding him and playing with him. Make sure to let him sleep some, Kayla told her. He's been sick. I can take care of your kitten. Well, if you get confused, text me or search on YouTube for Kitten Lady's videos. She'll teach you all you want to know. Kayla walked over and looked down at Crypto, nervous about actually leaving him. She took him from her sister and kissed him on top of his midnight black head. Be good, boy. Crypto simply looked at her as if she'd lost her mind. Don't hurry back. Take the time to have a nice meal, Amanda told her. I will. Kayla knew that Max wouldn't settle for anything less. I'll be back before midnight. You don't have to be. I can't imagine we could find enough to talk about to fill 7 hours. I'll be back before midnight. Kayla handed her kitten back to her sister, feeling as if she was abandoning him. It would only be a few hours, and she'd be back with him. You might be surprised, Amanda said. She held little Crypto close, and he seemed to be falling asleep on her. Go. With one last look at the kitten, Kayla left the room and went downstairs. It was a few minutes before 5, and she knew Max would be punctual. There were so many people in the valley who were routinely 15 to 30 minutes late, and thankfully, she wasn't dating one of those. Dating? Is that really what she and Max were doing? It seemed odd to her. Why would he even want to date someone who spent all of her time in a tool belt, hammering things? The man had apparently lost his mind. She heard the knock at the door and picked up her purse, walking to the door. Amanda had searched her purse and made her exchange her screwdriver for lipstick. It didn't feel like a fair trade at all to Kayla. She opened the door and smiled. Hi. Hi. Do you have Crypto all settled with Amanda? I do. But I'll warn you now, I feel like a nervous mother leaving her newborn for the first time. Well, what I think that would feel like anyway. It's not like I've ever had a baby, and I hope you don't think that's what I meant, and I'm babbling. I'm not used to dating, and it shows. Kayla shook her head. Sorry about that. Max grinned. I like you all flustered and stuff. And I'm thrilled to hear you don't have a child and you don't really date. All good information for me. Get me nervous enough, and I'm sure I'll tell you every secret I've ever known. Wanna give it a try? Sounds like a fun game. He took her hand and pulled her outside with him, kissing her quickly. I'm sure you have some sisters spying on you, so we'll be circumspect. I might kiss you in the car, though. Kayla had never been around a man who always wanted to kiss her. Max was introducing her to many new things. You might want to keep your kissing to a minimum tonight, to keep my babbling from reappearing. Oh, no. The babbling just adds to your charm. Max led her to the truck, and they headed for Fish Haven and Cooper's restaurant. It was next to a golf course overlooking the lake. It was perfect place for romantic dinners, in her opinion. I've only been there a couple of times, so that will be nice. What's good there? Everything. Depends on what you're in the mood for. All right. She refused to let herself worry and spend the whole evening talking about crypto, so she searched in her mind for something else to talk about. I had fun at the fair today. Thanks for taking us. I enjoyed it, too. And your recommendation of that jam is going to make my morning toast 1,000,000 times better. When I was a kid, I always hated oatmeal, so I'd sneak a spoonful of the jam in there when Mom wasn't looking. Made it so much better. He grinned. And do you like oatmeal now? I still like it better with that jam. She shrugged. I'll eat it, but it's not my favorite. Now give me a box of crunch berries, and I'll go to town. Just so you know, I'm making mental notes of this conversation. You should. Sometimes I need to be lured out of whatever project I'm working on with food, and crunch berries top the list of foods that work for me. Not a bad idea. Why do you have to be lured out? Kayla pursed her lips as she thought about the right way to answer. I just get so involved in what I'm doing and wanting it to be done so I can start the next project that I don't tend to leave unless I'm dragged out. You don't like finishing projects? Oh, I love finishing them and starting them. The middle is the part one hate, so I work harder in the middle than any other time so I can get through it. She shrugged. I should show you my video of the house for YouTube. I just have to add the pics of when the house is done with all the furniture, and I'll load it. I'm pretty excited to see how people react. Are you trying to become one of those YouTube personalities? Max asked her as he pulled into the parking lot of the restaurant. Not at all. Not unless it means fame, fortune, and unlimited crunch berries for the rest of my days. He laughed. Well, I guess it could mean those things, but I don't think I'd want to be famous. I wouldn't either, honestly. Being recognized everywhere I went would make me crazy. She shook her head. I just know there are people out there who would like to see what I'm doing. I've kept a blog of my houses for a while, and I was challenged to move to YouTube. I'll still do the blog, but I'll link to the YouTube videos. They show what I'm doing a little better. I'm also blogging about little crypto. He's a miracle in my eyes. Dang. She hadn't meant to mention crypto. She'd have to be more careful. I want to see your blog. She pulled her phone from her purse. What's your number? We never did exchange. He rattled off his number, and she quickly typed it in. It was hard for him to understand why Kayla didn't think she was beautiful, but he wasn't going to press her any longer on the issue. He was simply going to tell her how pretty she was every time he was prodded to, and that was that. When he reached the structure where the jam was, he handed the woman the bag, and she carefully put the jars in it. "Does your girl always carry a kitten around everywhere?" He shrugged. "We haven't been dating long, but I think if she fostered a lot of cats, she would have a lot of them. She gets too attached to ever let them go. I've never seen anyone do that before." "Well, she found a dying kitten whose siblings had died and whose mother was gone, presumably dead. She couldn't help herself, and she started to bottle feed. Now he's doing a little better, but he's still really sick, so she carries him everywhere." The woman shook her head. "Mother Nature takes care of kittens like that. His mother would have killed him mercifully." "Maybe. But she's helping him to live. I don't see that as a bad thing. I guess that depends how much of her heart she's already poured into the little thing. If he's not going to live, then she just might lose herself. But to each his own, I guess. Well, he's lived and known love for weeks longer than he would have before she met him. I'll never see that as a bad thing. I suppose that's one way to look at it." She handed him the bag filled with the jars of jam. "Thanks for your business. Thanks for the jam. I promise, it will be eaten." Max walked out of the tent, realizing that he wholeheartedly approved of what Kayla was doing even though it was odd. She was saving a life. How could that ever be a bad thing? "I'm sending you a text with the name of my blog." When she was finished, she dropped her phone back in her purse. "Now we have each other's numbers, and we can call and text at will. It will make setting up dates with you so much easier. Welcome to the 21st century, Kayla." "You too." Once they were seated in the restaurant, Kayla looked out over the lake. "My favorite thing about this place is not the food, believe it or not. It's the view of the lake. It's so amazing. I think that's the best part about this area," Max told her. "I love that we have both lakes and mountains. We have beautiful views of everything. When I have some houses up and running for Airbnb, I think I want to build my own place. I'll buy a little tract of land as high into the mountains as I can, and I'll build. That's where I'll live. I don't need to keep floating around as I fix up houses. I think crypto and I need our own place." He nodded. "That sounds amazing. Have you thought about how big you want it to be?" She shrugged. "No idea. I'm sure I'll never marry or have kids, so it doesn't have to be big." "You don't want to marry?" Max asked, frowning at her. "That's not what I said. I said I won't marry. See the difference?" Kayla wasn't sure why she'd even brought marriage up. She hoped he wouldn't think she was trying to get him to convince her that she should marry. "Not particularly." "Do you want to explain?" "Well, it comes back to me being so manly is the word I'm looking for." Max laughed, covering his mouth with his napkin. "You're anything but manly. Just because you do a man's job doesn't mean you're not beautiful and feminine." "Well, I guess that's true. Someday maybe I'll feel feminine." He shook his head. "I think you're beautiful. And feminine. And exactly what I'm looking for in a wife." "You have lost your mind," Kayla said, taking a sip of the water in front of her. "I'm not even going to discuss this anymore." He sighed. "All right. What kind of features do you want in your house?" "Oh, that's easier. I want a nice kitchen, though I'll probably never cook. It'll look good. Do you think I could build a drive-through window for deliveries?" He laughed. "Do you know anyone who delivers around here? Grubhub is coming. I can feel it." By the time their meal was over, Kayla was ready to be out of the uncomfortable chairs and off to do something else. "Anything else?" As he paid, she said, "Thank you for a delicious meal." Max nodded. "Maybe next time I can cook for you." "I'd love that." "Chicken fingers?" No, not chicken fingers. I could cook for you at my place. I make a mean lasagna. Or chicken pot pie. If it's a yummy comfort food, I make it and make it well. He shrugged. I had to learn to make the food for the bar. Dad was never interested in cooking, and the way I run mine, I'm mostly a short-order cook. Having tasted your chicken fingers, I believe that. Are you obsessed with my chicken fingers? He asked. Oh, absolutely. I could eat them a lot more than I do. Give me a chance to cook something else for you. I know you'll love everything I make. Kayla nodded. All right. But don't ever forget my silent love affair with your chicken fingers. I haven't seen anything silent about that love affair. He signed his name to the credit card slip and added a tip. Let's go to my bar, and we'll dance. Sounds good to me. As they headed for the door, the woman at the next table over stopped them. Where can we dance around here? She was in her mid-50s and looked positively ecstatic at the idea there was a place to dance in the area. Kayla could see the internal debate on Max's face. She knew he wanted the clientele of the bar to be mostly locals, but he couldn't turn down business. If you have a GPS, I'll write down the address for you. I own the bar, and we're known for delicious chicken fingers as well as other small meals. You'll have to come in when you're hungry. Is there a live band? The woman asked. Nope. We're small, and people dance to whatever is playing. I tend to play only country music, because that's what my patrons prefer. I see. The woman shrugged. We'll still come and dance one night this week. I'm excited. Aren't you, dear? The man with her, obviously uninterested in what she had to say, simply nodded and said, huh. We'll see you there, then. Max took Kayla's hand, and they wove through the tables to get to the door. He was as apathetic about dancing as she was excited. That's going to be fun to watch. I got the same impression. I hope I'm never in a relationship where we just do things together because we're supposed to. I want to be with someone who enjoys the same things I do. I understand.